we saw from the gentleman from Rhode Island talking about priorities and trying to sweep under the rug the vast array of claims from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to defund police, quote after quote after quote on the record, calling for the defunding of the police, and then to claim $350 billion to go to solve that problem. Yet the Washington Post, in all of its right-wing nuttery glory, fact-checked erroneous claim by Democrats and Jen Psaki that the GOP, rather than progressives, had defunded the police. They gave them the three Pinocchios, quote, significant factual error and or obvious contradictions, i.e. mostly false. The $350 billion was to go to state and local aid, to sweep aside actually funding the police after local police were defunded, while crime skyrockets across the country. We know this to be true. But you know what, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they don't like to talk about those facts. When we had a hearing in here about the heartbeat bill, I said, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will not mention the word heartbeat the rest of this hearing. Guess what? They didn't. Because heartbeat doesn't really help the agenda, talking about a heartbeat, does it? And here, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to talk about dead Americans. Also, not very helpful to the agenda. 5,000 dead Americans, as my colleague from North Carolina pointed out. None of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to talk about those 5,000 dead Americans, do they? Not helpful to the agenda. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to talk about the skyrocketing murder rates in the 12 major cities that broke their homicide records in 2021, all had Democratic mayors. Not helpful for the agenda. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to talk about victims of crime, that 89% of black victims were killed by black offenders. We don't want to talk about that or talk about ways we can address that because it's not helpful to the agenda. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to talk about the dead Americans from fentanyl. 100,000 dead Americans from drug overdoses and poisonings. Don't want to talk about that. Not helpful to the open borders agenda, causing Americans to die. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they don't want to talk about the deaths piling up from this body's COVID policies, suicides, mental health issues, people dying because they couldn't get health care because of lockdowns. No. Let's just run away from that. Let's just sweep that aside. Let's not talk about excess deaths. Let's not dive into and have hearing after hearing about excess deaths when we're talking about tens of thousands of Americans of excess deaths for non-COVID natural causes. Are we studying that data? No, because it's not helpful to the agenda. My colleagues simply don't want to talk about these issues. They don't want to talk about the dead that are resulting from radical environmental unicorn energy policies around the world. We're seeing play out in real time because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are so committed to their radical leftist environmental energy agenda that they want to bury their head in the sand as to what's actually happening when you don't drill for American oil and gas and have a strong position in the world to ensure that we've got energy abundance to make sure that we're secure, free, and have the energy we need. No, that's not helpful to the agenda. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, you know what I never hear from my constituents? I never hear from my constituents, oh, please give the Department of Justice more power. Please, Congressman Roy, will you please give the Department of Homeland Security more power? I just please. Please, Congressman Roy, will you please give the FBI more power? I want the FBI up in my grill. I want the FBI targeting my parents. I want the FBI targeting Americans for daring to question the holy grail of school boards. Yeah, I get those questions a lot. And I would just point out in closing, following up with Mr. Jordan's points, the FBI's counterterrorism criminal divisions created a threat tag, edu officials to track instances of related threats according to the email from a whistleblower. The purpose of the threat tag is to help scope this threat on a national level and provide an opportunity for analysis of the threat picture for effective engagement with law enforcement. That's what this bill would do. It would empower federal bureaucrats, federal authorities to go after the American people. And that's why we're opposing it.